Up next, we're going to have Charles Blow, a noted op-ed columnist for the New York Times, and Buck Davis, a renowned diversity expert. We're going to talk to them. They're part of our special edition of No Talking Points tonight, right after the break. Time now for No Talking Points. So tonight we're doing things a little different here. We've invited two people to help guide us through a color divide, a divide that has become a flashpoint as the story of Trayvon Martin and his death unfold. Charles Blow is a noted op-ed columnist for the New York Times, and Buck Davis is a renowned diversity expert. Charles, to you first. I want to put up something that you tweeted, Charles. You said, I don't want to look beyond Trayvon right now. I don't want to deal with the larger implication. You said, my soul needs this case to be resolved. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I think that there are a lot of people involved at this point who have larger views than what I'm applying to this case. There are civil rights groups who have large agendas that include civil rights in this case, but also all sorts of civil rights for, voting access and things like that, and they have their right to bring all of that to this case. For me, it's much more simple. There is a 17-year-old boy in a grave in Florida. He was put in that grave on March 3rd. He will never get to be a day older. And the simple question for me is, did the man who shot a hole in his chest on the night of February 26th, did he have a reason for doing that? Was it a justifiable homicide, or did he cross the line in some way and should be charged and brought before a jury and let that jury determine whether or not he is guilty or innocent? And I think that what Trayvon has done has really touched something in a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and it's really... Yes, go ahead. Go for it.
We're going to get to that, but people of all backgrounds are speaking out about this, but let's be honest here. Some black leaders have been accused of a rush to judgment. Some black members of the media have been accused of a rush to judgment. Critics say more information is needed. You respond to that?
No, I am absolutely, I have a zillion questions, right? So I often ask questions both on social media and in the column that I wrote on March 16th, was the first time I ever wrote about this, which included a litany of questions, which I feel like need to be answered for people to feel better about this case and about the justice system. And a lot of that will come out if, in fact, Mr. Zimmerman is ever charged and brought before a jury. However, I do take umbrage to this point, which is that people keep getting upset that people are keeping this case alive. There would not be a DOJ intervention and FBI intervention if people had not brought this case before the public and the public had not responded the way that they did. The police department, the captain would not have stepped down if there was not public pressure from the media and from the public. And the state attorney would not have recused himself if that were not the case. There is a role for people to bring things to the light, and there is a role for the public to say, we want justice in this case. And that doesn't mean that you say that Zimmerman is guilty or innocent. It is to say that there is enough evidence here from what we know now to suggest that a charge, at the very least, a charge is not a conviction.
Probable
a charge
cause
should be brought.
You're talking about there's probable cause here.
And he should go before a judge, and a jury should figure out whether or not he is guilty or innocent.
Okay, Charles, just if you can respond quickly to this, and I know that this has really gotten a lot of people, sort of emotional. And because I want to bring Buck in, but I want to ask you, in that column, you talked about your column, you wrote that you talked about the burden of young black males in America. Explain.
There is a real issue with young black men and authority figures, and a lot of times that expresses itself with their interactions with police. That is not to say that you don't worry about your kids when they are in neighborhoods that are known to be, that have crimes. We do. That doesn't mean that you don't worry about your kids when they're around their friends and they may be introduced to something or asked to experiment with something. You do. And all of those things do happen. But layered on top of that is the very real reality that you also have to worry that people in positions of authority, people armed with guns, may also find your child suspicious even if they are doing absolutely nothing wrong. And that is another layer of concern that young black men in this society have to deal with, and that is just a fact.
Okay. So, Buck, basically what Charles is talking about, profiling in this case, and what I think you say you'd rather use stereotyping. And I'm just going to, in plain language, do you think that, and I don't mean to condescend to anyone, I just want to be able to get this out. Yeah. Do you think that most white Americans understand or get the issue of profiling or stereotyping in the way that Charles is talking?
I think that we understand the definition. I think it's a leap for us to understand the experience. And I'm talking in generalities here. I have never had the experience of having a police officer pull me over for driving a luxury vehicle, only to have the police officer say, "You don't look like you belong in this car. You don't look like you fit in this automobile." I've never had that experience. In the absence of that experience, it makes it hard for me to truly understand the dynamic of racial profiling at its core. You following me?
Yeah, I am following you. So then what does that mean then? Is it something that you can't get just because you don't experience? There are things that I can empathize with, but I don't live them, so therefore... But just because I don't live them doesn't mean that they don't exist.
Exactly. Bringing the awareness of how stereotypes play out in our society is so important for us to be consciously aware of. Racial profiling is stereotyping in the worst form. Do I stereotype? Absolutely. We all have normal, natural reactions to different types of people. That's just how we're built.
You teach diversity and you still stereotype. Do you stereotype black men?
Every day that I'm making $1, I'm talking about this, and I find myself in certain moments stereotyping different types of people. For instance, I was in North Carolina a couple of weeks ago, and I was waiting for my car to be valeted, and this sharp-dressed African-American man walked up towards me in a black jacket. I went to hand him my keys. My automatic reaction was, "This is the valet." He quickly said, "What makes you think I'm the valet?" And I quickly said, "I am so sorry. My racist thoughts made me feel like you were the valet." Yeah. So that's me not on my best day.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting you said my racist thoughts. No one wants to be cast as a racist.
No, but if you look
or having racist thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was a racist thought because it was steeped in a bias that he's an African-American man. He's standing here with a black jacket on. I need to have my car valeted. Oh, it must be him. Yeah. That was on my work. That was on a not-so-good day. This week in Chicago, I had a better day. When I'm walking through Nordstrom, I need some shoes. My first thought was, when a very handsome African-American man dressed approaches me, my thought was, can you get me a size 13? Yeah. But it didn't come out of my mouth. We don't get in trouble for what happens in our head. Right. We get in trouble for what comes out of our head and the behaviors that accompany those stereotypes.
Do you think George Zimmerman, who is Hispanic, by the way, which is interesting, do you think he's even aware or may have been aware that he was possibly, let's say possibly profiling someone? And some people, it's a foregone conclusion that it was not, that it was profiling. Do you think that he may be aware of that, or some people are unaware that they're even stereotyping and profiling because of the sort of way we grew up?
Yeah, I don't know what's going through George Zimmerman's head. I'm not aware when I'm stereotyping most of the time. I try to manage my thoughts, though. We need to start policing our thoughts as they come through our head to ask us, why do we think that about this person? Why are we behaving in this certain way? What's driving that interaction with someone who's different from me? Do
you think, and quite honestly, by this story, and because it's been portrayed in black and white, do you think that white people, and especially white men in general, feel attacked by this story?
I think that some do. I think that some don't. I don't feel attacked by the story at all. But I think that it's what race represents in the story. So all of us are bringing our story to this experience. If your story more closely aligns with that of Trayvon Martin's, then you're probably policing the facts for how is this an injustice. If your story more closely aligns with George Zimmerman, then there's a likelihood that you're probably policing the facts for how is this murder justified. So we're bringing that, then you layer on race, and it makes it a very volatile case that reminds us of a lot of pain in this country.
Okay, we've got to run. Charles, bottom line it for us. Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, I think that we're still waiting for the special prosecutor to come through and say, whether or not they will bring a charge against George Zimmerman. And there's a lot of pressure right now for them to make sure that they have done a thorough investigation and that they come back and say, you know, whichever way they go, they are able to explain that to the public in a way that is credible and that people can actually buy. And I think that what we ultimately will end up with, this is just my hunch, is that George Zimmerman will be charged with something. Whether or not he will ultimately get a conviction or an acquittal, that's a different story. But I do believe that eventually he will be charged.
All right. Thank you, Charles Blow. Appreciate it. Thank you, Buck Davis, very much. And you know, this is what we do with No Talking Points all the time. Here's tonight's No Talking Point. As a white man, Buck doesn't know what it's like to walk in my shoes, nor in Charles's for that matter. And as a black man, I don't know what it's like to be white. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I'm a man. But what I can do, what we can all do while this is still fresh, is to examine our motives, conscious or unconscious, empathize, take nothing for granted, keep calm, and carry on. And that's tonight's No Talking Points.